Welcome back to another video. Now, where is the sunshine gone to? Not to matter, we've had a great summer, we can't complain. It's a bit drizzly today, but it's fine just now. Now, previous video, my groceries, I showed you that I had bought a new book for us. This new book is welcome because it's got more tales of the old countrymen. So it makes a change from the old poachers and the other one as well. So, a new book, new stories. I've opened up the page here now. I'm going to do a story. It's called The Prize Ploughman. And his name is Joe Bainbridge, horse master and farmer in Durham, Cleveland and Yorkshire. Now a little bit about this book. It's the evolving story of country life in the 20th century and is visibly brought alive through the tales of 17 real country characters in this colourful book of rural reminiscences ranging in age from 72 to 97. These remarkable men have worked and excelled in various occupations, from parish priest, village school teacher, gentleman farmer and country solicitor to cattle lorry driver, farm labourer, hedge layer, horseman, forester, etc., etc. From the exhilarating wells of County Mayo in Ireland to the timeless oak-beam tranquility of Shakespeare's Middle England. So let's get on with it. The one I've picked is Prize Ploughman Joe Bainbridge. As a lad, Joseph Curry Bainbridge dreamed of owning a pair of horses. Indeed, he was so besotted by them, he once played truant to attend a ploughing match. Unfortunately for him, someone took a photo for the local paper. This was seen by the headmaster of Harrogate Hill School, and young Bainbridge was soon spotted among the crowd and subsequently punished. But the event only served to strengthen Joe's love of the working horse, destined to dominate his life. One of only two children and born on 29th of November 1914, Joe was always close to horses because his grandfather was a blacksmith and a postman, and his father was a blacksmith and a smallholder. Remarkably, Joe still has his father's pre-Great War day book. The hundreds of penciled entries from October 1910 to May 1913, revealing just how varied a blacksmith's work used to be. He worked on every day of the year, though in the period recorded only once on Christmas Day, when he provided frost nails. The customers' names were always entered, and some provided regular work over the years. As usual, the shoeing of horses was a mainstay, but it is interesting to note that old shoes at about 6 pennies each appeared to have been provided more often than new shoes at around 10 pennies each. Mr. Bainbridge also seems to have been a regular supplier of glass and oil. The selection of entries gives the amount earned or obtained from each job or item. The railway provided a lot of work in the Darlington area, but there was plenty of poverty too, and the Salvation Army did a lot of good. It was all walk, walk, walk then. There were trams for those who could afford it, but you never went to sleep on them. The roads were so bumpy and bad. Coal was scarce and most lighting was by gas. Money was very scarce, and I started to help farmers to earn a bit. But we lived fairly well for a month or two when the pig was killed. Mother made lots of black pudding and sausage with sage in it. She also used to get the butcher to kill 3 or 4 sheep and cure them just like a pig. And she soaked hair in milk for a day to take all the strong flavour out. But we never had any potatoes because Father hadn't time to dig the garden. Joe left school at the age of 13. You could more or less please yourself when you left and earned a shilling here and a shilling there. Then I started with the Dale's pony and the float, delivering milk around the streets of Darlington at 3.5 a pint for 6 bob a week wages. Cream was very scarce. That was when the Zeppelins went over and they bombed Hartlepool. In those days, wood was cheap and easily obtained, so Joe also started to earn a living through woodwork, making items such as barrows, walking sticks and garden seats for anyone who wanted them. Much of his leisure time was spent playing the mouth organ at Bop Hop's dances. Then the family moved to Stillington, where Joe did some contract work for the iron and steel works. He describes this period of his life. In the course of this work, however, Joe was kicked a lot. Well, he was kicked a lot, and this led to him walking badly in later years. In 1939, Joe and his wife took on the tenancy of Sir Bedford Dorman's 172-acre antelope farm, Newby in Cleveland. The place was named after the ship on which an aristocrat bought marble, which became the fireplace. Back to England after the Battle of the Nile, Joe's parents also went to live there. As a farmer, Joe was exempt from conscription, but he joined the Home Guard. The LDV looked, ducked and vanished. During the war, he had German and Italian prisoners of war working for him. The Germans were hard-working and even carved toys. Cleverly made wooden pecking chickens for Joe's 2 daughters. Now, also at Antelope Farm were the land girls, Margaret Seal and Dorothy Darrow. They always worked hard and enjoyed a good joke. We still kept in touch. Many local land girls ended up marrying the farmer's son. At the start of his 31 years at Antelope Farm, Joe grew mainly wheat and oats, most of which were for home consumption. But one unwelcome crop consisted of umpteen bombs, some unexploded because the farm had been made into a mock aerodrome to draw enemy bombers away from the real one at Thornaby. During a raid, we all used to run under the granary steps. Also unwelcome were the many rats which used to live in the countryside. They were especially common at harvest time, but we wore leather leggings and breeches so that they couldn't run up your legs on the thrashing days. During difficult times, the horses on a farm were always among the last things to go. Kit Dowson's son used to say, when poverty gets into the stable, things are in a very poor state. Whereas most farms in the area had about 7 or 8 horses, Joe usually kept 10 or 12, all broken in by himself. His horses were highly regarded and were sometimes loaned for the day or hired out for logging and other jobs. They had a good feed of home-produced boiled linseed, oats, bran and hay early and late in the day. But out in the field they had a poor do, and had to wait patiently while Joe enjoyed his repast of homemade pork pie and a can of cold tea. After the war, Joe was a regular participant in ploughing competitions, and through his great understanding of horses, their intelligence sometimes supersedes that of humans, enjoyed considerable success. Joe walked his horses, pulling a plough on a rouley, a flat. This meant a very long day, as each competitor usually had to plough a half-acre plot, starting at 8:30 a.m. and finishing at 3:30 p.m. But Joe urged that the long walk was essential because fresh horses were no good for ploughing, as they were not settled enough. When you were ploughing with two horses, the most steady one walked in the furrow ahead of the ploughman. The other on the unploughed land to the left. Sometimes you ploughed with three, side by side. But I didn't like that, as there was always a niggly one, and they never seemed to swing together as they should have done. The horses, Clydesdales, were broken in at 2 years old and generally worked until they were about 20 years old. Joe's favourite was Dina. The very day she was 2, I put her in the binder and cut corn. Topsy, on the other hand, was like a bull at a gate. She dropped dead in the shafts of a cart at the age of 12 when I was leading turnips. In those days it was nearly all spring corn, so most of Joe's ploughing was in early February. However, some fields would have lain fallow. This meant land which was left fallow for half the summer, between the harvesting of one crop and the sowing of the next, during which it was ploughed to kill persistent weeds by dissection. These were prepared before Christmas, and we never stopped for the weather. Though one exception was the winter of 1946-7, when all the sheep were buried in the snow. But no matter how dogged the character, favourable weather was always important. A dull day wasn't in your favour. You wouldn't plough a straight furrow in the mist. Little wonder then that much superstition surrounded ploughing and farm life generally. For example, to bring good luck, Joe and his contemporaries would say May Gosling 3 times on a May day, and March Hare 3 times on March the 1st. Many people, meeting a magpie, said, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie," and Captain Ramsden always used to take his calf off to one. Among his many ploughing March triumphs, Joe regards his 1946 win at the Stockton Ploughing and Hedge Cutting Society Championship as his best. But while such success was good in that, it promoted his name as a horse breeder and a trainer. There was little financial reward. The most I ever won was £3, £3. The certificates were the greatest reward, and the rivalry was intense. Sadly, Joe had 3 first-prize tickets for cart horse Colt Foal stolen at Stocksley in 1952, and in the 1970s, some even stole 6 of his ploughs. Another match which Joe remembers well is the international he attended in Ireland. Unfortunately, he became ill and could not plough. But while he was there, he spotted the first bananas he had ever seen. There were hundreds of them. So I took some back home, and the children tried to eat them with their skins on because they didn't know any different. Just after the war, the new tractors were generally very welcome as labour was scarce. But Joe never liked them, and when eventually he did buy one, the man he employed left as he couldn't stand the noise. Another strange sight in Newby Village in those days was Joe's grey Morris, bought in 1946. There was only me and the builder had a car then. Dogs too were Joe's constant companions. I had lots of them, especially sheepdogs. They were all friends of mine. But it was bad to make a fuss out of them, as they would have no respect. One of my favourites was a spaniel. Jess, I kept her to sniff out the turkey eggs, which were laid all over the place in nettles and brambles. I used to take old Jess with me to shoot hares and rabbits for the pot. She loved it. As soon as I went to reach for the gun on top of the kitchen dresser, she went crazy. Once I lent her to a man for a shoot, and he wasn't going to bother to bring her back the same day, but she barked and barked and barked all night, and in the end he had to come over at 2 a.m. in the morning. On retiring at 65, Joe bought the 20-acre Bullamure farm near Northallerton, Yorkshire. When that became too much, he sold up and bought a bungalow in Northallerton. His wife died in 1983, and in recent years Joe himself has lived in a nursing home. Looking back over his life, a very full and rich one, not financially, but lots of friends, Joe certainly retains an impish sense of humour. One of his favourite yarns concerns a day when he was hedge laying. This man stopped and said, "I say, Jack, can you tell me the way to Stokesley?" I said, "Who told you to call me Jack?" he said. "I just guessed it, old fellow." So I said, "Well, guess your way to Stokely then." You really thought I was the country bumpkin. Another time in about 1953, old Miffy, the village gardener, dropped dead off his bike right by our gate at the Antelope's farm. Mrs. Bainbridge covered him up with a blanket, sat by him and waited patiently for Joe and the men to come back from the harvest. When they did, Joe went off in the Morris to fetch the village bobby, who was really nervous. He asked me to put Miffy in a trailer and take him to the mortuary at Stokesley. He also said, "Will you take his boots off too?" And I said, "I don't mind. He won't kick now." Right guys, I hope you enjoyed that story, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading out, of the prize ploughman, Joe Bainbridge. Durham, Cleveland and Yorkshire. What a lovely story, eh? Anyway, we'll finish here. And as normal, another day I'll give you another story in another book. So thanks for listening and watching. I'll catch you again. Bye bye. Prize ploughman, Joe Bainbridge, eh?